of complications that he has.
Johnny Diamond, thanks very much. People of Myanmar are back out on the streets again today, despite the killing of 18 protesters yesterday by police, the deadliest day yet. Nguyen Chan is with the BBC Burmese service, is in Yangon in Myanmar, and I asked him whether the most recent deaths are scaring people or spurring them on.
There's two different opinions. Some states we have to be smart and then avoid confrontation, and then others also, some especially young generation, they haven't actually had such kind of experience in their life. This is the first time they witness what the military are capable to do like such things. So they got frustrated. They may be thinking more confrontation and then more in aggressive way. But at the same time, they know that all the risks. So they are preparing all the best they can. I mean, like they use all the handmade shields, and also they are like, setting up the barricade in Yangon. Most of the scenes you will see is like people setting up the barricades in almost in every street, every township.
What's it like to live there then, Yen? I mean, perhaps for those who aren't even taking part in the protests, is it just taken over life in the city?
So start from the morning until the dark coming, we see people faces are like just dead faces. People have no emotion. You cannot see so much smiling faces. Burmese people are well known for their smiling faces, but we don't see much smiling faces on the streets nowadays. And everywhere, every city, they try to protect themselves. At the same time, they try to protest against the military coup as well. When the police come and then security forces come and then their vehicles roll in, and then so people just run away. But it's just for a few minutes, and then when they are gone, and then they just aim and protest. So it's like a more like cat and mouse games. Also, from the security forces, I'm not sure about what the actual order came from the highest level or not. But what we see in the ground is they don't have any tolerance, zero tolerance. Even these small protests, they see it, and then they just go and try to disperse them. As using any forces, it's available. We have seen tear gas already, and also we have seen rubber bullets. There's nothing much more we can expect to see. Yeah, we see every forces, you can imagine. But at the same time, people, as I said previously, they know the risk, but they have no other option.
Nguyen Chan speaking to me this morning. Well, now, a week ago, when the Prime Minister set out his roadmap out of lockdown, there was a surge in people booking foreign holidays this summer. But whilst there's optimism that international travel may soon take off again, there's little information about the measures likely to be put in place to allow it. And the arrival of the Brazil variant illustrates the challenge of ensuring safe travel. Zorab Honolikashvili is the Secretary General of the UN's World Tourism Organization. It's based in Madrid. I asked how he sees tourism opening up again.
2020 was the worst year in the history of tourism, and international arrivals fell back to levels last seen in 1990. So 120 million tourist jobs are directly at risk still. But we're talking now about the period when UK is going open, and this is very good signal for the rest of the community. And domestic tourism will return first. International tourism will need longer. We'll see what happens, but I'm really optimistic, and I really hope that 2021 will be much better than 2020.
What needs to happen to make that so?
First of all, I think we have to establish harmonized protocols. Don't confuse the tourists. There is no rules, and we are still talking about vaccination, but unfortunately there is no rules and no standards. What and how vaccinated tourists can travel. Does he need PCR or not? Does he need mask or not? If we don't establish these protocols today, tomorrow will be late. And from our point of view, from the UNWTO, we are working very closely to all our member states to establish as soon as it will be possible this kind of protocols and standards.
But even at the moment, we don't even have. I mean, we're hearing for the UK, people are arriving with lots of different forms to show that they've had a negative test. Do we need to have test certificates to be standardized and recognizable at all borders?
I think it has not been must, but will be very supportive and very useful to restart tourism, because today, Sarah, we don't have any kind of databases. They are talking about millions of different applications. It's very important first to establish protocols. All tourists know that when you are going to the airport, they need to check in, then go to the border, then go to the plane, to gate. The same kind of protocol we have to establish regarding tests and regarding traveling protocol. So
seriously, can that be put in place for this summer?
To be honest and to be realistic, it will be difficult, but we have to start with some countries. And what we are pushing now and what we are recommending now, to have at least 10, 20 or 30 countries who can agree and who has the same protocol, same kind of corridors and same kind of rules, how they can travel from one country to the other countries, you know.
Okay, so just as we're seeing, for example, Greece, Italy, Cyprus communicating about having a common travel area, if other countries like the UK and other EU countries can join that, that's the way you build those common rules, is it?
Exactly. I think, Sarah, that all communities and all the world are looking for Europe and European Union, and everything will happen very fast here. And I'm sure that it will be a good example to use these standards and harmonized protocols to the other regions and other countries.
Have you booked somewhere to go away for holiday?
Starting from July, I travel a lot. Just 1 week ago, I came from Dominican Republic. By the way, this is only country who does not ask PCR test. So I'm still traveling, and I'm going to travel.
Is this travel for business, though, to the Dominican Republic?
No, it was first private holiday for me during my first mandate during 3 years. So
you deliberately picked a country that didn't need a test and made it easy?
Exactly, and I saw the occupation rate in the hotels was more than 70%. People want to travel, you know, sir, and I think Dominican Republic is another nice showcase, a nice pilot country, how they manage it and how they are receiving tourists. You know, safety protocols are there. You feel more than safe in the hotels, in the airports, in the transport.
But they don't need negative tests. It seems strange you're picking one that, you know, to highlight as a good example, one that doesn't have that tight restriction.
They are electing and they're testing 1 in 10 or 20 arrival. You know, it's really interesting to see. They have quite good and strong infrastructure, so the people are traveling.
That was the Secretary General of the UN's World Tourism Organization, Zora Palikashvili. Well, if you can't travel to the Dominican Republic, you might think about something closer to home, perhaps a music festival. Sonics, the Streets and Groove Armada performing at the last Boomtown in 2019. It was cancelled last summer, along with all other festivals. But this year's sold out last week after Boris Johnson announced a roadmap out of COVID restrictions. Anna Wade is director of the festival, which usually welcomes around 60,000 to Hampshire in the middle of August. Good afternoon to you.
Hi there, Sarah.
How confident are you that it'll go ahead?
That's the million-dollar question, that one, really, isn't it? I think that the announcement from the Prime Minister last week was a huge light at the end of a very dark tunnel, I think, for all of us within the industry, and also, as we saw, the public, who have just been absolutely just crying out for some level of positivity. But there is still quite a bumpy, if not a obstacle-laden road right in front of us. So in terms of confidence, I think that we're all just kind of keeping our eye on what needs to be done and making sure that we're at the forefront of all of the mitigation measures.
Well, okay, we'll come to that in a second, because you're going full steam ahead. You're obviously allowing people to buy tickets. But are you?
Yes, we are, yeah. So
how many have you sold?
We've sold out, so we've sold up to our capacity of 48,000 public. So yeah, we've sold out. The tickets went on sale on the 1st of October last year when we launched for this year's event back then.
Right. So it's been long. And last week, Reading and Leeds said they were going ahead. I noticed Isle of Wight looks like it's going ahead, but it's scheduled for 17th to 20th of June, which is just coming up to the end of restrictions. Are you just expecting that at some point you may have to cancel and then you'd refund everybody? Is that the only way to do it?
Well, I think we're just treating it really similar to what we had to do last year, which was, you've got a really unclear path in front of you, but you've just got to kind of keep working with everything you've got with you in the immediate future. So obviously the roadmap was incredibly welcomed. That's given us something to work with and work towards and keep an eye on and make sure that our own timelines are aligned with that. But obviously there's quite a lot of other things in place that we also still need for the whole entire industry to be able to open up with some kind of confidence in 2021.
You are going to have some thousands of very eager people coming to Boomtown, assuming it does all go ahead. How do you ensure that it is safe?
Oh, well, I mean, when we're putting on any festival, there's a huge amount of safety that goes into play in terms of the planning. So we'll work with our usual safety advisor group, which is all the local authorities and the medical and welfare and fire, rescue, police, everybody like that, to make sure that we've got all of the plans as robust in place as possible.
You don't normally have to cater for a disease that depends on close.
No,
I'm just wondering, do mosh pits go ahead?
Oh, well, this is all the work that's going on at the moment. So in terms of the government announcing the event research programme as well. So there's that side of things, but there's also a working group within festivals, like a cross-industry festival working group that are also working with the Department for Digital Music and Culture, as well as Public Health England. So there's a lot of work going on in the background to really understand exactly all of those measures that are going to need to be implemented for a safe, secure and fun festival season.
Well, good luck stopping people if they want to do it. Anna Wade, thanks very much. Well, the reason we were given almost a year ago that the country needed to go into lockdown was the risk of our critical care units being overwhelmed. A significant proportion of hospitalised patients with COVID-19 need help with breathing, including mechanical ventilation and other services that critical care staff provide. If there has been a front line in this battle, they have been it. The number of such beds in England has actually increased in the last few years. Today, though, the group which represents NHS Trust is calling for a formal review of capacity. Chris Hobson is Chief Executive of NHS Providers. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sarah.
As I say, they have already gone up. So what sort of increases are you talking about being needed?
Well, that's why we need a review. I mean, what we've got is a problem here, and that's been shown up by COVID-19, which is we've got insufficient capacity. So just to give you an example, we've got 7.3 intensive care beds per 100,000 people. Germany's got 33.8. The USA's got 34.3, and we know we've got fewer intensive care beds per head of population than France, Italy, Australia, and Spain. And what was shown during the COVID-19, both the first phase but also the second phase, is that we don't have either the right absolute number of beds, but also there's a problem in terms of the way that they're spread across different regions, which is that in particular it looks like the Eastern England, the Southeast and the Southwest have got fewer critical care beds than they need compared to the other regions. So that's why we need to have a proper and formal review of this. And just to make the point that what we had to do during COVID, and I accept that it was completely exceptional, but was that we had to scale up at an incredible speed, which basically meant that we had to stop doing other things because we were, for example, using operating theatres as temporary critical care facilities, and we had to ask our staff to do the most extraordinary things that you wouldn't want to ask them to do on a regular basis. So the point that we're making is that we need to COVID-19 future-proof the NHS because we know it's going to be with us for a period of time to come, and that having the right level of critical care capacity to deal with outbreaks is fundamental to doing that.
Okay, now you talk about the NHS having to stop doing other things. Now, with hospital rates down, are we now going to see a rapid increase in other non-COVID work to try to work through the backlog?
Well, Sarah, it's incredibly easy to bank the end of the phase we've just been through before we've actually reached the end of it. And if you talk to chief executives like I was doing last week, what they're saying to us is they're still having this really major problem of managing the current levels of demand that they've got. We've still got thousands of COVID patients inside hospital beds compared to the 500 that we had last September when we were at our lowest. And certainly what they were saying to me last week is, given that we're talking talking about critical care is they were saying that it's all still a daily struggle to kind of manage critical care capacity because there is still huge pressure on it. So we still think there are a number of weeks to go before we get back to the levels where you can absolutely on a consistent basis think about providing the full range of services. Again, obviously, nobody wants to delay any operation. That's really important. But the other point to make is that we do need to give our staff a rest. They are absolutely exhausted. And we need to balance, on the one hand, the need to get through those backlogs as quickly as possible. But we can't do that unless we actually have staff who are actually present and aren't on sick leave because we've burned them out.
Those staff, would you recommend, this applies for everybody really, given what we've been talking about, not least today, would you recommend that they go on a foreign holiday, that they go to a festival? What impact do you think that's going to make on levels here?
Well, I think, as you know, Sarah, because you and I have spoken about it several times before, we've been cautious all the way through this pandemic, and we've said that in terms of people taking responsibility for their own what they do personally, it's really important that we all play our part in making sure that we control the spread of this virus. I mean, the vaccination campaign is absolutely brilliantly.
Chris, we must leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris Hobson. A Palestinian musician is facing a court hearing after being accused of breaking rules around performing near a holy shrine in the West Bank. Sama Abdul Hadi is a techno DJ whose arrest by Palestinian police has been criticised by human rights groups. Our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman reports.
This was a techno party that sparked a storm.
I've never been detained in my life. It was very confusing for me because I thought I did nothing wrong.
Something happened that got it out of proportion. What happened with Sama is a fiasco.
Well, there's a huge sandstorm at the moment. We're close to the ancient city of Jericho. This story starts with a techno party by a Palestinian DJ called Sama Abdul Hadi. Her crew were filming it as part of a promotional video, and it took place here. This place is called Nabi Musa.
I had a permit for 3 different sites, but this was the most appropriate because it's a beautiful location with a beautiful desert around it, and I thought it should be showcased to the world.
It's a tourist spot, it's a guest house, and it's also a holy site. There's a mosque inside where many Muslims believe the Prophet Moses is buried.
We were 30 people filming a stream showcasing techno producers and DJs from all over Palestine and the Arab world, and showcasing touristic attractions. And then some guards came from the area. And they started yelling, and they had sticks and firecrackers. Then they started yelling, telling us to get out, to get out.
The men said the event was desecrating a holy area. But the Palestinian Authority, which oversees the site, had agreed to the filming.
The news that came out about it was completely different than what we were doing in that location. I had a permit from the Ministry of Tourism to film music in that location, and there were musical events that happened in that location before.
The team packed up and left. But then Sama Abdul Hadi was arrested by the Palestinian police. And the case seemed to her to spin out of control.
They put her in prison. So Sama was presented to the public opinion as a sacrifice in order to appease public opinion.
She was jailed for 8 days. Palestinian human rights campaigner Amar al-Duwaik supported her.
I believe had Sama organized a cultural dance, a Palestinian cultural dance, in the same location, that would not have provoked the same reaction. Tech music is associated with nightclubs, with very, wild parties. Public authorities, they decided to hide and not to take responsibility.
Case drew on tensions between some younger liberal Palestinians and those with conservative views that still form a core part of society. Sheikh Noor al-Rajabi is a community leader who was at the site the next day.
The ones who should be punished are those who gave her permission from the Ministry of Religious Affairs and the Tourism Ministry. That being said, we should not take responsibility off her shoulders. After all, she is a native of Palestine. She is a Muslim.
The Fallas supporters describe it as a fiasco, saying people got the wrong end of the stick from the start due to false claims on social media. The case went up to the Palestinian PM, Mohammed Shtaya. He ordered an inquiry which blamed his own ministries for giving the permits, but also Sama Abdul Hadi and her team. She now faces a further court hearing.
I'm hoping that the investigation and all this process will lead to fair conclusion. Techno is not another worshipping thing, it's a universal music that is heard all over the world.
Tom Bateman reporting. A quick headline before we go. The Duke of Edinburgh has been transferred to a different hospital to be treated for an infection and tested for an existing heart condition. PM is at 5. I'm Sarah Montague. That's the world at 1:45.
Studio director was Joe Wallace and the editor Jonathan Harvey. With a new series now on Radio 4, well, this week, Dr. Erica McAllister, the senior curator of fleas and flies at the Natural History Museum in London, who knew, traces some surprising outcomes from centuries of entomological research. Metamorphosis, how insects transformed our world.
So, I'm holding here, as one does, holding a chicken's head. It's in a jar, a perfectly preserved jar, and it was collected in Sri Lanka in 1907. And the eye is still there looking at you, but surrounding it in the eyelids are hundreds of tiny little fleas. Over 80% of described animals on our planet are insects, and yet their appearances can seem as alien or as strange as many a mythic beast. But some of us who study these wondrous species, both now and in the past, have discovered a treasure trove of remarkable insights. Insights that have increased our knowledge across many a scientific discipline. I'm Erica McAllister, and in this series I'm taking a peek into some of these entomological pioneers and examining how their groundbreaking observations and experiments have led to some truly novel developments. There's very few of us who haven't come across fleas in our life, thanks to our love of fluffy household companions. These insects don't fly to escape though, they jump, and they have an amazing jump. As a child, I would catch them and I'd flounder around trying to re-catch them as they jumped out of my grasp. How do they do it though? Well, much of our insight begins with the late Dame Miriam Rothschild and what turned out to be her lifelong fascination with these acrobatic insects.
They're rather sweet, aren't they? Doesn't everyone who has a great love of fleas, but I have. These fleas can jump 30,000 times without stopping. It's very rather odd.
The name Rothschild was synonymous with banking, and Miriam's father, Nathaniel Charles Rothschild, was also involved in the family business. But his heart lay in fleas. He travelled extensively during his life and described over 500 species to science. He believed that formal education crippled young, especially bright girls' minds, and so Miriam's garden was her classroom. Her home was her laboratory. Her teachers were the books, the people, the world around her. She was to gain no formal training, but amassed 8 honorary doctorates, and as entomologist Richard Lane remembers, she was to become a leading authority on all things flea.
I suppose her first real claim to fame was that she started working on the collection you've just been talking about, Charles Rothschild's collection, and she wrote several volumes of a thing called a catalogue of fleas. Now, you might think this is some really boring list of all the names of fleas, but actually, when you open these huge tomes and look inside, there's a massive amount of biology and observations about these fleas, not just what their names are and describing them.
I have described them as insects which fly with their legs. Wings are no good to you if you live in fur. They just get in the way. So as a parasite, they've lost their wings, but they've replaced it by this stupendous jump.
Miriam would come waltzing into the museum, and I do mean waltzing as opposed to walking, with her moon boots on and these great flowing gowns. And she was really an indomitable figure. She didn't have much time for bureaucracy and hierarchy of life. She just wanted to talk to people who were interested in doing science.
We're just walking into the flea collection. And what is amazing about the flea collection and why I feel very special getting to curate it is it's in the original cabinets. So the Rothschild request was that we keep them forever in these cabinets. And these are in absolutely beautiful wood. And they are so lovely inside. They're lined with velvet and softly cushions that the slides will sit on for eternity. Okay, and above that, we've got tiny little cabinets, and I love this because it's so Miriam. So some of the cabinets are labelled Ovi, Larvae, Pupa. She's obviously made some serious detailed dissections and showed the life cycle of various ones. But then there's one that's called Odds and Ends, because who doesn't have that? And there's another one called Monstrosities, and it's where she's got slightly larger or weirder than average fleas on a slide, and it never fails to cheer me up.
Well, of course, the jump was a sort of scientific sideline that I was interested in, because one realised this jump of the flea was so extraordinary. I mean, they took off and disappeared.
Most flea legs average just 3 millimetres, and so without much length, they really don't have much time to generate energy to push off the ground. So how do these tiny insects therefore achieve such amazing jumps? Miriam carried out many intricate dissections of the flea's anatomy and produced some beautifully detailed images of their tissues and joints. The flea's jumping, she claimed, was not just down to their muscles. Here's Greg Sutton of Lincoln University, a specialist in the biomechanics of insects.
What fleas do is they use a little trick where they store energy in a spring in their thorax first. So they lock their legs in place, they store energy in this spring in their thorax, and then they release the spring, and their spring recoil can recoil the energy and shoot their legs out much more quickly than the muscles could do it alone. This is mechanically identical to when we use a archery bow to fire an arrow. We have our muscles generate the energy slowly, and that energy is stored in the elastic energy of the bow, and then we release the bow, and the bow returns the energy to the arrow much more quickly than we could have generated.
The acceleration actually turned out to be 140 G, and that was 20 times the acceleration of a moon rocket re-entering the Earth's atmosphere.
These acceleration forces are phenomenal, and the key to the spring's success in propelling fleas a distance of nearly 40 times its length comes in the form of an elastic protein known as resilin. It was first discovered in the wing hinges of locusts by Danish zoologist Torkel Weiss-Foe, and he was able to show that this protein undertook hundreds of millions of extensions and contractions without losing its form. It basically sprung back into shape every time.
So the spring is put together like a sandwich. There's the protein resilin that the insect manipulates that's very stretchy, and then there's a saccharide called chitin, which is very, very tough. And the springs are made of a composite of chitin and resilin.
And just to tell people how strong this chitin is, it is basically the external exoskeleton of most insects. You know when you try and squeeze a flea? It is really hard. They are really, really tough little creatures.
And that interface allows them to load the springs and keep them loaded for long periods of time in preparation for a jump so they can jump at a moment's notice.
And it's these unique properties of possibly the most elastic substance we know of in the natural world that's beginning to attract the attention far beyond the realm of entomologists.
Hi, I'm Christy Kick. I'm a professor of material science and engineering and of biomedical engineering at the University of Delaware. And we've had a long-term interest over the last 15 years or so of trying to apply resilin in different biomedical applications.
Inspired by resilin's resilience, the Kick Laboratory has been synthesizing this amazing rubber protein. Their aim is to model and mimic resilin's ability to stretch and recover, and so to regenerate damaged human body parts that undergo repetitive strain at high frequencies, such as the vocal cords in the throat.
We've been chemically reacting the resin to make hydrogels, so things like Jell-O that you might be familiar with in your kitchen, and to make those materials so that you can inject them with a needle and then have them form as hydrogel materials in whatever organ.
It's amazing. So the long-term objective of your work is to develop these materials that you can use in very, very small, delicate environments.
That's exactly right. So in the insect organs, resin is combined with other materials.
Mm-hmm.
So you can add polymers, you can add nanoparticles, so we can make structured materials that we can isolate cells in specific parts of the hydrogel so we can start to capture what the organism